Welcome back to Yehoshua's Daf Yomi Shiur, where the Daf continues daily until the complete revelation of Mashiach ben David, Messiah the son of David. Today, we'll be looking at Tractate Chullin, page 72. Top of the page, we'll be starting with 72a. Top of the page, with the words V'ha ubar v'chayam. V'ha ubar v'chayam rechishtei tabaos damu v'kametame la ubar l'chayam. The Gemara objects, but what about the Mishnah's case of a dead fetus in its mother's womb, and a midwife who touched it there, which is similar to the case of two swallowed rings, and yet the Mishnah rules that the fetus renders the midwife impure. Amarabo shani ubo hoi v'soifilotzeis amorovo ubo soifilotzeis tabas in soifilotzeis elo amorovo pumpedisoi adi taima de hamil savumanu Rav Yosef. Rabbah said a fetus is different from a ring in this regard, since it will ultimately leave the womb. Rabbah said in puzzlement, is that to say that a fetus will ultimately leave the womb, but a ring that someone swallowed will not ultimately leave his body? A ring will certainly be expelled eventually as well. Rather, Rabbah said, the scholars of Pumbedita know the reason for this matter. And who is the sage referred to as the scholars of Pumbedita? It is Rav Yosef. D'Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Tuma zo eina midivrei Torah ela midivrei Sofrim. Ma eina midivrei Torah ela midivrei Sofrim. D'lo yitema li v'divrei Chiva Adama uba v'meisha b'tomei ela filu l'Rabbi Shmuel Adama uba v'meisha Torah. Gazaru ba tumad midrabanon. As Rav Yosef says, the Rav Yehuda says, that Shmuel says, this impurity of the midwife, in the Mishnah's case, is not in effect by Torah law. Rather, it was decreed by rabbinic law. The Gemara says, what was Shmuel's intention in emphasizing it is not in effect by Torah law? Rather, it was decreed by rabbinic law. It should have sufficed for him to say simply the impurity is decreed by rabbinic law. The Gemara answers, he said this so that you should not say that the ruling of the Mishnah is only in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who says that one who touches a dead fetus in a woman's womb is impure by Torah law, and that is why the midwife was rendered impure. Rather, even according to the opinion of Rabbi Ishmael, who says that one who touches a dead fetus in a woman's womb is pure by Torah law. Nevertheless, the sages decreed that a midwife who touches it is impure by rabbinic law. My taimo, Amar Avoshayo, Gzeira Shem Yoitzi Vlad Roisha Chutz Leprosdo. The Gemara asks, what is the reason for this decree? Rav Hoshaya said, it is a rabbinic decree lest the fetus extend its head out of the concealed opening of its mother's womb. If it did, it would be regarded as having been born, and it would be ritually impure by Torah law. The sages were concerned that the fetus extended its head, and then the head returned inside. But the midwife did not notice. Consequently, when she touched the fetus, she mistakenly assumed she remained ritually pure. To safeguard against this, the sages decreed that in any case where she touches the dead fetus, she is ritually impure. Ihachi, Ishanami, Ishamar Geshis Batsmo, the same lo lechayo terido. The Gemara objects, if so, the sages should also decree that the woman herself who is carrying the fetus is impure, since she also might not notice the fetus's head emerged. The Gemara explains the woman accurately senses with regard to her own body whether the head of the fetus has emerged. The Gemara asks, but then she would have said this to the midwife, "Why is there a need for a decree?" The Gemara answers, since the mother is distracted by the pain of childbirth, she does not have the presence of mind to warn the midwife. My Rabbi Yishmael, Umay Rabbi Akiva, Titania, V'chol asher yigar b'nei hasadeh, Lehoitzi ubar b'meisha, Divrei Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Akiva oimer, L'rabois goylel v'doifek. The Gemara cited a dispute as to whether one who touches a dead fetus in a woman's womb is ritually impure. It now elucidates that dispute. What is the opinion of Rabbi Ishmael and what is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva? As it is taught in Hebraita with regard to the verse, and whoever in the open field touches one who is slain by the sword, or one who dies on his own, or a bone of a man, or a grave, shall be impure 7 days, Numbers 19:16. The phrase "in the open field" indicates that one is rendered impure only in a case where he touches an exposed corpse. This serves to exclude one who touches a dead fetus in a woman's womb from being rendered impure. This is the statement of Rabbi Ishmael. Rabbi Akiva says this phrase serves to include the grave cover and the grave walls, upon which the cover rests, as sources of impurity that render impure anyone who touches them. Rabbi Yishmael Golol B'Doifik Hilchasa Gemirilo. Rabbi Akiva Uber B'Mei Isha Tomim Midoy Raiso Minolei Omer Rabbi Yoshai Omer Kron Negea B'Meis B'Nefesh Eizu Meis B'Nefesh Shel Odom Havi Oimer Zu Uber Sheb'Mei Isha. The Gemara asks, and from where does Rabbi Yishmael derive that the grave cover and grave walls render one who touches them impure? He learned this halacha through tradition, not from a verse. The Gemara asks, and as for Rabbi Akiva, from where does he derive that a dead fetus in a woman's womb is impure by Torah law? Rabbi Yehoshua said he derives it from the verse that states, whoever touches of a corpse of the life of a person that died, he will be impure. In Numbers 19:13, the term "of the life" can also be interpreted as inside the life. What is the case of a corpse that is inside the life of a person? You must say that this is the dead fetus inside a woman's womb. Rabbi Ishmael Habi Boyle Levis Dama Bam Meis Shimitami Shinema Hano Yeba Meis Benefesh Odom Ezu Nefesh Odom Shimitame Havi Oimer Zur Dam. The Gemara comments Rabbi Ishmael requires that verse to teach about a quarter log of blood that comes from a corpse, meaning that even it imparts impurity like a corpse. As it stated, whoever touches a corpse of the life of a person that died, Numbers 19:13. What is the case of a life of a person that imparts impurity? You must say, this is referring to a quarter log of blood. As blood is regarded as a life force of a person, as the verse states, for the life, the blood is the life, Deuteronomy 12:23. What is the case of life? What is the case of a life of a person that imparts impurity? You must say this is referring to quarter log of blood, as blood is regarded as the life force of a person. As it states, for the blood is the life. Deuteronomy 12:23. I wonder why they didn't quote Leviticus 17:11. Okay. For the blood is the life. And the person requires a minimum of a quarter log of blood to survive. Rabbi Akiva letamei jamar afrevis dama ba mishnei meisi mitain poel. Tanya Rabbi Kiva Oimer. Minayin lo yizdam haba mishnei meisim shimitame ba'oyel. The Gemara comments, and Rabbi Kiva does not accept this derivation. He conforms to his line of reasoning, as he says, even a quarter log of blood that comes from two corpses imparts ritual impurity in a tent to people and other items that are under the same roof. As it is taught in a Braita, from where is it derived that a quarter log of blood that came out of two separate corpses also imparts ritual impurity in a tent? Shenemar v'al kol nafshos meis lo yavo. Shtei nefashos v'shiur echod. It is derived from a verse as it is stated with regard to the prohibition against priests coming in contact with a dead body. He shall not come upon any people that are a corpse. Leviticus 21:11. The use of the plural form people, nafshot, indicates that the blood imparts impurity, even if it comes from two people, as blood is referred to as nefesh, Deuteronomy 12:23. And the use of the singular form corpse, met, indicates that this blood combines to complete one measure, meaning the minimum amount of a quarter log required to impart impurity. New Mishnah. Zog the Heilige Mishnah. Behei Muhammad Kasha Leiled. Yehoshua bares yadai michatacha v'achar kach shochat es imoy habasar toir shochat es imoy v'achar kach chotacha habasar maga nevelo divrei Rabbi Meir. If an animal was encountering difficulty giving birth, and as a result the fetus extended its foreleg outside the mother's womb, and someone severed it and afterwards slaughtered the mother animal, the flesh of the fetus is ritually pure. If one first slaughtered the mother animal and afterward severed the foreleg, the flesh of both the mother animal and the fetus are ritually impure due to having been in contact with the carcass. Since the foreleg was not permitted to be consumed through the act of slaughtering, it is regarded as a carcass with the associated ritual impurity. The rest of the flesh, which was permitted to be consumed by the slaughter, was in contact with it and was so rendered ritually impure from it. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir. And the rabbis say the flesh has the ritual impurity of having been in contact with the treifa that was slaughtered, as the limb is regarded as a treifa that was slaughtered. By Torah law, although it is prohibited to consume it, it does not impart ritual impurity. Nevertheless, the sages decreed that a treifa that was slaughtered, as well as anything that comes in contact with it, is regarded as ritually impure to the extent that it disqualifies sacrificial foods that come in contact with it. And now continuing on to 72b, we will, Bezras Hashem, finish the Mishnah and then pick up the Gemara with the next Amud. So this will be quite a bit into the next Amud. So here we go. Mamatzinu, top of 72b, with the words Mamatzinu. Mamatzinu, the rabbis explain the rationale behind their opinion, just as we found in the case of a treifa that its slaughter renders it ritually pure according to Torah law, meaning ritual slaughter prevents it from having the ritual impurity of a carcass despite not rendering the animal permitted for consumption. So too the slaughter of the mother animal should render the limb of its fetus that left the womb ritually pure, despite the fact that its consumption is prohibited. Amar lahem Rabbi Meir, lo im tihara shchita treifa utam, davar shigufa titaher et haever davar she'enut gufa. Rabbi Meir said to them, no, if the slaughter of a treifa renders the body of the animal ritually pure, it is because the slaughter is performed on something that is part of its body, namely its throat. Does it necessarily follow that you should also render the limb that left the womb pure, given that it is something that is not part of the mother's body, Certainly not. Minayin l'treifa sheshchita mitarta behemoth tmea asur b'chila. Af treifa asur b'chila. My behemoth tmea ein shchita sa mitarta. Af treifa lo te'arena shchita. The Mishnah asks, from where is it derived with regard to a treifa that its slaughter renders it ritually pure, meaning prevents it from having the ritual impurity of a carcass? The Mishnah notes, there is a reason to say the slaughter should not render it pure, as one can compare a treifa with a non-kosher animal. A non-kosher animal is prohibited for consumption, so too a treifa is prohibited for consumption. Therefore, conclude, just as with regard to a non-kosher animal, its slaughter does not render it ritually pure, so too with regard to a treifa, its slaughter should not render it ritually pure. Lo. Ima martog v'behemoth tmeyot shelo hoyse lo. Shasa koisher. Toime b'treifa shehoyse lo shasa koisher. The Mishnah questions is a comparison. No! If you said that slaughtering cannot prevent an animal from having the ritual impurity of a carcass, in the case of a non-kosher animal, which is distinct, in that it did not have a period of potential fitness when slaughtering it could have rendered its consumption permitted, does it necessarily follow that you should also say this in a case of a treifa, which did have a period of potential fitness? Perhaps. Since the animal had a period of potential fitness, its slaughter remains effective in preventing it from having the ritual impurity of a carcass. Toy lecha ma shebesom hare sheno letreifa min abete minayin. The Mishnah rejects this distinction. Take back to yourself. I don't remember this term, tol lecha. Take back to yourself this claim that you brought, as it is insufficient. What about a case where an animal was born as a treifa from the womb, and so it never had a period of potential fitness for such a case? From where it is derived that its slaughter renders it ritually pure. Lo! Imamad b'behemoth tmea shekein in b'mina shchita toime b'treifa sheyesh b'mina shchita. The Mishnah reformulates this distinction. No. If you say that slaughtering cannot prevent a prohibited animal from having the ritual impurity of a carcass with regard to a non-kosher animal, which is distinct in that there are no animals of its kind that are permitted through slaughtering, as the Torah states the concept of slaughtering only with regard to kosher animals, does it necessarily follow that you should only say this with regard to a treifa, kosher animal, given that there are other animals of its kind that are permitted through slaughtering, meaning kosher animals that are not treifa? Perhaps, since the concept of slaughtering is relevant to that kind of animal, it can serve to prevent the animal from having the ritual impurity of a carcass, even if the slaughter cannot render it permitted for consumption. Ben shmona chai ein shchita soy mitaharta lefi she'ein b'mina shchita. The Mishnah notes, based on this reasoning, one must conclude that with regard to an 8-month-old fetus that was born alive, slaughter does not render it ritually pure, as there are no animals of its kind that are permitted through slaughtering. The Torah applies the concept of slaughter only with regard to the animals that were born full term. The Mishnah concludes here, and we'll pick it up on the next Amud of 72b, starting with the Gemara.